My name is Naomi, and at 67 years old, I never thought my only son James would choose his wife Allison over me. For 3 years, I welcomed her into our family with open arms, but everything changed with one social media post. When I saw their family photo captioned, "The family that matters without me, my innocent, good luck" comment triggered absolute chaos. Little did they know who truly owned everything they took for granted. Before I continue my story, let me know where you are watching from, and hit that subscribe button if you want to hear more stories about standing up for yourself when family betrays you. My late husband Robert and I worked tirelessly for over 40 years building our real estate portfolio. We started with nothing but determination, scraping together every penny for our first small rental property while raising James. Those early years were tough, with Robert working construction during the day while I balanced bookkeeping jobs and showing rental units on weekends. We missed school plays and baseball games because securing our financial future seemed more important then. I regret those missed moments now. When Robert passed away 5 years ago from a sudden heart attack, I found myself alone managing our considerable assets: 4 rental properties, a vacation cabin in the mountains, and our family home where we had lived for 30 years. The grief was overwhelming, but handling business matters gave me purpose. James helped initially with property maintenance, but his marketing career kept him busy in the city 80 miles away. 2 years after Robert died, James called excitedly about a woman he had met at his workplace. Allison was the new graphic designer at his marketing firm, and according to him, she was perfect. Smart, creative, ambitious, and with a laugh that lit up the room. I was thrilled. After years of watching James date women who never seemed quite right, his enthusiasm was contagious. When we finally met for dinner, Allison charmed me completely. She asked thoughtful questions about Robert, commented on family photos, and seemed genuinely interested in our history. She complimented my home cooking and even asked for recipes. For the first time since Robert died, I felt hopeful about having extended family again. Maybe even grandchildren to brighten my golden years. Their romance progressed quickly. Within 8 months, James called to announce their engagement. I could hear Allison squealing with joy in the background. That weekend, they visited to show me the modest diamond ring James had saved for. Seeing their happiness, I impulsively offered our family home for the wedding reception. "You could save thousands on venue costs," I suggested. "The backyard garden would be perfect for a summer ceremony." Allison hugged me tightly. "That would be amazing, Naomi. But are you sure? It will be about 120 guests." I assured her it was no problem. Our property was spacious enough, and I welcomed the opportunity to make their day special. That was my first mistake. The following months revealed subtle warning signs I chose to ignore. Allison began making increasingly elaborate requests for the wedding, professional landscaping for the garden, a new patio installation, renting premium furniture instead of using what we had. Each time I expressed concern about costs, she would touch my arm gently. "James and I want everything perfect," she would say. "This will be in all our family photos forever." Unable to deny my only child, I agreed to each escalating demand. My retirement savings could handle it, and seeing James happy seemed worth every penny. My friend Dorothy questioned my generosity over coffee one morning. "You barely know this girl," she warned. "Make sure they appreciate what you are doing." I dismissed her concerns. After years of loneliness, the prospect of a daughter-in-law and potential grandchildren blinded me to the reality unfolding. The week before the wedding, I met Allison's mother, Patricia, for the first time. She arrived with a designer handbag and shoes that probably cost more than my monthly property income. Her critical gaze assessed my home immediately. "This place has character," she said, emphasizing the word like it was a disease. "But Allison has wonderful vision. She can transform anything." During the wedding planning, I learned something critical. James had assumed he would inherit our family home eventually. The truth was more complicated. While I intended to leave him well provided for, I maintained legal ownership of all properties, including the house where James and Allison planned to live after their honeymoon. Robert and I had discussed this extensively before his death. Our properties represented our life work, and proper estate planning was essential. Following the beautiful but expensive wedding, I made what I thought was a generous offer. James and Allison could live in our family home rent-free to save for their own place. I would move to one of our smaller properties nearby. I assumed they would eventually buy the house from my estate when the time came, but there was no rush to formalize arrangements. "This way you can save for your future," I told them over celebratory champagne. Family helps family. James hugged me gratefully, while Allison examined the living room with new eyes. I mistook her calculated assessment for appreciation. To maintain family connections, I suggested monthly Sunday dinners together. Both agreed enthusiastically, and for a brief moment, everything seemed perfect. I had a beautiful daughter-in-law, my son, nearby, and the promise of family gatherings in the home Robert and I had built together. If only I had known what was coming. The first year of their marriage seemed promising. James and Allison settled into the house, and I helped with various renovation projects. When they wanted to update the master bathroom, I paid for new fixtures and marble countertops. When the kitchen needed modernizing, I covered the costs for stainless steel appliances and quartz counters. Each improvement increased the property value, so I considered it an investment in our family legacy. I first noticed the shift during an impromptu visit 6 months after the wedding. Several family photographs had disappeared from the walls, replaced by abstract artwork. The antique side table that had belonged to Robert's grandmother was gone, a sleek modern console in its place. "We needed to freshen things up," Allison explained when I inquired. Those old photos made the hallway feel dated. Those dated photos included my wedding portrait and images of James growing up. I swallowed my objection, not wanting to seem possessive. After all, they were making the space their own. Over the following months, James became increasingly difficult to reach. My calls went to voicemail with texts hours later explaining he was busy with work. Our monthly family dinners often got rescheduled or canceled last minute. When we did manage to gather, Allison frequently invited Patricia without consulting me first. During one particularly uncomfortable dinner, Patricia dominated the conversation with stories about her country club friends and Allison's childhood achievements. When I attempted to share anecdotes about James as a boy, Patricia interrupted. "Those stories are sweet, Naomi, but so old-fashioned. Nobody wants to hear about Little League games from 20 years ago." James looked uncomfortable but said nothing. Allison laughed lightly, placing her hand over her mother's. "Mom just means we should focus on the present, not ancient history." I was 65, not dead. My memories were not ancient history. After they left that evening, I sat alone in my living room, the silence deafening. The next day, I called Dorothy in tears. "They make me feel obsolete," I confessed, "like I am just some old woman with outdated ideas." Dorothy listened sympathetically before delivering a hard truth. "Naomi, I think Allison sees herself as the lady of the house now. Are you sure they understand you still own the property?" Her question startled me. Of course they knew. I had made the financial arrangements clear. Hadn't I? The following week brought troubling confirmation of Dorothy's concerns. My regular handyman Dave mentioned in passing Allison has big plans for when this becomes her place. Talked about knocking out walls and adding a sunroom. I corrected him gently. "The house remains in my name, Dave. Any major structural changes would need my approval." He looked confused. "That is not how she tells it. Said you signed everything over as a wedding gift." That conversation prompted me to contact Thomas, the attorney, who had handled Robert's estate. We met for coffee to review my will and property documents. "Everything is in order," he assured me, "but it might be wise to establish a formal rental agreement even with family. Protects everyone involved." I resisted the idea, worried it would create unnecessary tension. James was my son, after all. Surely a simple conversation could clear up any misunderstandings. But finding the right moment proved difficult. During holiday gatherings, I noticed I was increasingly sidelined. At Thanksgiving, Patricia sat at the head of the table in my former home. At Christmas, family traditions I had maintained for decades were abandoned for newer, trendier celebrations. Most telling was Allison's growing social media presence. She had started posting regular photos of their home, showcasing renovations and decor changes. She tagged design magazines and home improvement stores, building a following based on her transformation of the space. In dozens of photos, there was no acknowledgement that this had been my family home for 30 years, no mention of my contributions to the renovations. More concerning was my absence from their photos. James appeared occasionally, but most featured Allison and Patricia, sometimes with friends I had never met. There were dinner parties and gatherings happening in my former home that I knew nothing about. One evening, while scrolling through her public profile, I found a post that made my stomach clench. Allison standing in my garden, captioned, "Planning my dream expansion for our forever home. So grateful for this inheritance and the chance to make it truly ours." Inheritance, as if I were already gone. The situation deteriorated rapidly during their second year of marriage. At their anniversary dinner, which I had thoughtfully organized at an upscale restaurant downtown, Patricia raised her glass in a toast. To James and Allison and their beautiful home. Perhaps now Naomi can consider downsizing to something more appropriate for a woman living alone. The table fell silent. James stared at his plate while Allison smiled tightly. "Mom means well," she said. "But she is right, Naomi. You rattling around in that rental property seems silly when there are lovely senior communities nearby." I was 66, in excellent health, and actively managing multiple properties. The suggestion that I should consider senior communities was both premature and insulting. That same month, James received a significant promotion at work, bringing a substantial salary increase. Rather than saving the additional income, their spending habits escalated dramatically. Allison drove a new luxury SUV. Designer furniture appeared in my former home. Weekend trips to coastal resorts became regular occurrences. Then Allison quit her job at the marketing firm. "I want to focus on home design," she explained when I asked about her career change. "I am starting a blog about transforming older homes into modern spaces. Our place is my first project." Our place. The phrase grated on my nerves. The renovation requests became more extensive and expensive. They wanted to expand the kitchen by removing a load-bearing wall. They proposed converting the traditional dining room into an open-concept entertainment space. Each request came with professional design mock-ups and enthusiastic descriptions of how these changes would increase property value. Against my better judgment, I continued paying for these renovations. Each time I transferred money to their account, I told myself I was investing in my son's future. The alternative meant acknowledging the growing exploitation I refused to see. The contractors Allison hired began contacting me with confusion. "Mrs. Lawrence, your daughter-in-law has requested changes to the approved plans. Since you are the property owner, we need your authorization." When I questioned Allison about these conversations, she dismissed my concerns. "I told them you had given me full authority to make decisions. It is just easier that way rather than bothering you with every little detail." More troubling was discovering my name had been removed from utility accounts without my knowledge. When I called the electric company about a billing question, they informed me the account had been transferred solely to James and Allison months earlier. The social slights grew more obvious. At a neighborhood barbecue I attended, Allison introduced me to her friends, simply as James's mom, with no acknowledgement that I owned the house where they were gathering. When one neighbor mentioned remembering when Robert and I first moved to the neighborhood, Allison quickly changed the subject. My 65th birthday passed with minimal recognition. James brought over a hastily purchased card and small plant, staying less than 30 minutes before leaving for dinner with Allison's family. No celebration was organized, no acknowledgement of the milestone. During a routine visit to drop off mail that had been incorrectly delivered to my old address, I discovered my personal items had been moved from the master bedroom closet to the guest room. Photo albums containing irreplaceable family memories were boxed in the garage. Most distressing was finding several family heirlooms missing entirely. My mother's antique silver tea service, Robert's collection of vintage watches, and the handcrafted jewelry box my father had made for me were nowhere to be found. When confronted, Allison feigned innocence. "We did some decluttering. Those old things were just collecting dust." I assumed you did not want them anymore since you left them behind. James, witnessing my distress, became defensive. Mom, you cannot expect the house to remain a museum to the past. We need to make it functional for our lifestyle. Finding some items on online auction sites was hardly decluttering. I responded, showing screenshots from my phone. Those were family heirlooms, not decoration. Their expressions confirmed my suspicions before they launched into elaborate explanations and denials. They had been selling my possessions while systematically erasing my presence from the home. The stress began affecting my health. My blood pressure rose to concerning levels. I experienced insomnia and anxiety attacks. During one particularly difficult week, Dorothy came over daily bringing meals and providing emotional support. This has gone far enough, she insisted. You need to legally protect yourself. They are taking advantage of your generosity and maternal instincts. Finally, heeding her advice, I scheduled another appointment with Thomas. His concern was evident as I detailed the situation. Naomi, I am worried about potential adverse possession claims. By allowing them to act as owners for extended periods, making improvements, and establishing themselves as the public face of the property, you could face legal challenges down the road. They would not do that, I protested weakly, even as evidence mounted to the contrary. Family disputes over property are unfortunately common, Thomas replied gently. Let me prepare some documentation to clarify ownership and expectations. You do not need to use it, but having it ready would be prudent. I took the folder he prepared, but left it unopened on my desk at home. Taking legal action against my own son seemed unthinkable despite the growing disrespect. I still hoped for reconciliation without conflict. That hope died completely on Thanksgiving Day. The Thanksgiving holiday had always been special in our family. Robert and I had hosted elaborate celebrations welcoming friends and extended family to share gratitude and connection. Since their marriage, I had assumed the tradition would continue in my former home with me, as an honored guest, if no longer the hostess. The invitation came late, almost as an afterthought. James called 3 days before Thanksgiving. Allison thinks we should host this year, he said hesitantly. Her parents and some friends from her design blog will be coming. That sounds lovely, I replied. What can I bring? The pause was telling. Actually, Mom, we were thinking of keeping it small this year. Patricia has specific ideas about the menu and table setting for her social media friends. Only after Dorothy threatened to create a scene did James call back with a reluctant invitation. I arrived on Thanksgiving Day with homemade pumpkin pies and cranberry sauce, traditional recipes Robert had loved. Patricia greeted me at the door of my former home. Oh, we already have dessert catered. And Allison made cranberry compote with orange zest and cinnamon. But thank you for the thought. My contributions were relegated to a side table while Patricia dominated the kitchen I had designed and cooked in for decades. Allison fluttered about in a designer apron, arranging everything for optimal photography angles. This will be perfect for my holiday home series, she explained to her friends, none of whom were introduced to me. During dinner, I sat at the far end of the table while Patricia occupied the hostess position. My attempts at conversation were interrupted or ignored. When I mentioned how Robert and I had established the tradition of sharing gratitudes before the meal, Allison smiled tightly. We have a more contemporary approach planned, she said, directing everyone to write anonymous gratitudes on decorative cards for a reveal later. After dinner, Allison arranged everyone for photos in front of the fireplace. I was positioned on the far edge, barely in frame. For several shots, I was asked to step aside completely so they could capture just the immediate family. The following morning, still feeling the sting of exclusion, I checked social media while having my coffee. Allison had already posted multiple photos from the gathering. The featured image showed her standing between James and Patricia, arms linked, heads together in laughter. The caption read, "Thanksgiving with the family that matters most. So grateful for these two amazing people who make life complete. The family that matters most." The words burned like acid. Dozens of comments praised the beautiful family photo. Friends gushed about their perfect holiday. Not one person questioned my absence or noted that an entire branch of James's family had been erased. My hands trembled as I stared at the image. These people were celebrating in my home, surrounded by wealth Robert and I had built while publicly declaring I did not matter. For nearly an hour, I sat frozen, heart pounding painfully in my chest. Tears blurred my vision as 30-plus years of motherhood, sacrifice, and generosity were dismissed in a casual social media post. Dorothy called, having seen the post herself. "Naomi, this is unconscionable. What are you going to do?" What could I do? Create family drama with a public complaint, beg my son to acknowledge my existence? The options all seemed humiliating. After ending the call with Dorothy, I took my blood pressure medication and tried to calm myself. Years of maintaining peace and accommodating others had led to this moment. My son and his wife clearly believed I was already irrelevant, a footnote in their life story rather than its foundation. With surprising steadiness, I typed a simple comment beneath the photo, "Good luck." Just 2 words, yet they represented a seismic shift in my perspective. No anger, no accusations, just a wish for the luck they would certainly need without my continuing support. Within minutes, my phone buzzed with notifications. Friends and distant relatives sending private messages. "Are you okay? What happened? Did you see that awful post?" James called an hour later, his voice tight with controlled anger. "Mom, what is with the cryptic threat on Allison's post? Her friends are asking questions. You are embarrassing us." "It was not a threat, James. Just good wishes for your future plans. It seems you 3 have everything figured out without me." "What is that supposed to mean?" "It means exactly what it says. Good luck to you all." I ended the call despite his protests. Minutes later, Allison's voice filled my voicemail. "How dare you try to ruin my Thanksgiving post with your passive-aggressive comment? James has been bending over backward to include you, despite your old-fashioned ideas. You owe us an apology." The entitlement in her voice crystallized something inside me. For 3 years, I had prioritized family harmony over self-respect. I had financed their lifestyle while being gradually erased from the narrative. I had watched family heirlooms disappear while staying silent to keep the peace. No more. With newfound resolve, I called Thomas. "I need your help implementing those protective measures we discussed. How quickly can we proceed?" "I can have everything ready by tomorrow morning," he replied, clearly relieved by my decision. "Do it," I said firmly. "All of it." After hanging up, I felt lighter than I had in years. The anxiety that had plagued me for months transformed into purposeful calm. That evening, I slept soundly for the first time in weeks, no longer carrying the weight of unreciprocated sacrifice. The wheels of justice were finally turning. The next morning dawned clear and cold, matching my newfound clarity of purpose. I dressed carefully in a blue suit I had worn to important property closings with Robert. Professional attire had always given me confidence in business matters, and reclaiming my property was definitely business. Thomas welcomed me into his office with coffee and a sympathetic smile. I prepared everything as we discussed. "Are you certain you want to proceed with all these measures?" "Completely certain," I replied, accepting the coffee but declining a pastry. My appetite had disappeared with yesterday's revelation replaced by steely determination. For the next hour, we reviewed each document in detail. The property deed confirming my sole ownership, tax records showing I had paid all property taxes continuously, documentation of all renovation expenses I had covered, proof that utilities remained in my legal name until recently changed without authorization. Thomas explained the eviction process thoroughly. Since there is no formal lease, they are technically month-to-month tenants. Given your familial relationship, the court would likely grant 30 days for them to vacate rather than the standard 7. I nodded, signing the formal eviction notice with a steady hand. Next came property reclamation documents, formally requesting the return of all personal items belonging to me that remained in the house. "What about tax implications?" I asked. "I have been essentially providing them free housing for 3 years. Thomas slid another document forward. "This retroactive gift tax filing covers the fair market rental value you have provided. It is considerable, approximately $5,000 monthly, for a property of that size and location." The total made me inhale sharply. Over $180,000 in housing value I had given them, not including renovation costs and other financial support. We can also document the items sold without permission as conversion of property should you wish to pursue that angle, Thomas suggested carefully. I considered the family heirlooms that had disappeared. Included in the documentation, but hold on pursuing it directly. Let us see how they respond to the eviction first. Thomas nodded, adding notations to his file. How would you like these served? I want the eviction notice and property documentation delivered to James at work. He should understand the seriousness without the immediate drama of Allison's presence. Send the rest by certified mail to the house. And the timing for changing locks? Schedule the locksmith for tomorrow afternoon. I know they both have commitments then. My knowledge of their schedules would work to my advantage now. Thomas dispatched his legal assistant immediately with the documents for James's office. As she left, he turned to me with concern. Have you considered security during this transition? Family disputes can become volatile. I had not thought that far ahead, but his question triggered practical considerations. Can you recommend someone? By noon, arrangements were made with a reputable security company to change locks and install basic monitoring. I also contacted Mario, the contractor who had worked with us for years before Allison replaced him with her design friends. Mario, I need a complete property assessment tomorrow after the locks are changed. I am concerned about potential structural issues from recent renovations. Of course, Mrs. Lawrence. I heard they were making some questionable changes. I will bring my full team. Despite my outward efficiency internally, I battled waves of guilt and anxiety. Was I overreacting? Would this permanently damage my relationship with James? The logical part of my brain reminded me of 3 years of escalating disrespect and exploitation. The emotional part ached for simpler times when James was young and family roles were clear. Dorothy insisted on taking me to lunch after my meeting with Thomas. You look pale, Naomi. When did you last eat properly? At the small cafe near Thomas's office, I picked at a sandwich while updating her on the morning's events. I am proud of you, she said firmly. This has been coming for a long time. They forced your hand with that cruel social media stunt. James will be furious, I whispered, reality setting in. He might never forgive me. Dorothy reached across the table to grasp my hand. The question is, would you ever forgive yourself if you continued allowing them to erase you from your own life, from your own home? After lunch, Dorothy accompanied me shopping for a new outfit. You need armor for the confrontation. She insisted, helping me select a cashmere sweater in deep burgundy and well-fitted black pants. Look strong, feel strong. Returning home, I walked through each room, slowly touching familiar objects and photographs. I had downsized considerably when moving to the smaller property, but had maintained a comfortable, elegant space filled with memories. This was my home now, not a temporary waiting room until death. My phone rang at 3:15. Thomas confirming delivery of documents. James received everything personally. He appeared shocked, but signed for the documents without incident. Thank you, Thomas. Please remain available this evening. I expect a confrontation once he reviews everything. The rest of the afternoon passed in methodical preparation. I created a detailed inventory of personal property still at the house, including photographs and approximate values. I gathered all financial records of house payments, renovation costs, and maintenance expenses. I even located the original deed Robert and I had signed 30 years earlier, our names clear and bold on the official document. As evening approached, I contacted the local police department's non-emergency line. I am expecting a potentially difficult family discussion this evening. No threats have been made, but I want to document the situation in case assistance becomes necessary. The dispatcher took my information professionally, promising to alert patrols in my area to be ready if called. The final preparation involved brewing a pot of chamomile tea and sitting in Robert's old armchair, the one piece of furniture I had insisted on bringing to the new place. Running my fingers over the worn leather armrests, I could almost feel his presence supporting my decision. You always said we needed to be firm about boundaries, I whispered to his memory. I should have listened sooner. The grandfather clock in the hallway chimed 6 times. Darkness had fallen outside my windows. The waiting had begun. The headlights swept across my living room curtains at 6:43 precisely. The engine was barely silenced before a car door slammed with enough force to rattle my windows. Heavy footsteps pounded up the walkway, followed by the violent ringing of my doorbell. I took a deep breath, straightened my new sweater, and walked calmly to the door. Through the peephole, I could see James, his face contorted with a mixture of panic and rage. I opened the door, but remained in the threshold, blocking entry. "Mom!" he shouted, waving papers in his hand. His face was indeed pale as a ghost, just as I had anticipated. "What is this? The house. The lawyer just called me. What did you do?" "Hello, James," I replied, my voice steadier than I expected. "I see you received the documentation from Thomas. Would you like to come in and discuss this civilly?" He pushed past me into the living room, still clutching the eviction notice. "Civilly, you are evicting us from our home without warning, and you want civility. It is not your home, James. It never was. Please sit down." "Not my home. I have lived there for 3 years. We have invested thousands in renovations. You cannot just take it back on a whim." I gestured again to the armchair across from mine. "Sit down and I will explain exactly what is happening and why." His breathing heavy James finally sank into the chair, running a hand through his disheveled hair. I sat opposite him, hands folded calmly in my lap. "First, let me clarify ownership. The house has always remained solely in my name. I allowed you and Allison to live there rent-free as a gift, not as a transfer of ownership. Every major renovation was paid for by me, not your investment, as you just claimed. But we picked everything out, handled all the contractors. Yes, you selected premium materials and luxury upgrades, which I financed entirely. The kitchen remodel alone cost $86,000. The master bathroom expansion was another $42,000. I have receipts for everything." His expression shifted from anger to confusion. "I thought those were family investments. Allison said you wanted to improve the property value for all of us." That was her interpretation, not my statement. Before he could respond, my phone rang. The screen displayed Thomas's name. "I should take this," I said, pressing the speaker button. "Hello, Thomas." "Naomi, I wanted to confirm that James received the documents and understands their implications. Is he with you now?" "Yes, he is here. You are on speaker." "Good evening," James Thomas said professionally. "I want to ensure you understand that the eviction notice requires vacancy within 30 days. All items belonging to your mother must be accounted for before your departure. The property remains legally hers, as it has been continuously since your parents purchased it 30 years ago." James's face flushed. "This is ridiculous. You cannot just change everything overnight. We have rights." "As month-to-month tenants without a formal lease, your rights are limited," Thomas replied calmly. "Your mother has been extraordinarily generous, allowing free occupancy for 3 years. The court will recognize that generosity while upholding her property rights." As Thomas continued explaining legal details, headlights flashed across the window again. 2 car doors slammed in quick succession. "I believe Allison and Patricia have arrived," I noted, ending the call with Thomas after confirming he would remain available. Seconds later, my doorbell rang repeatedly, accompanied by pounding. I opened the door to find Allison in tears, Patricia standing behind her with a thunderous expression. "How could you do this?" Allison cried, pushing into the house. "After everything we have done for you?" I closed the door behind them, maintaining my composure. "Please enlighten me, Allison. What exactly have you done for me?" The question momentarily stunned her. Patricia jumped in, pointing a manicured finger at me. "You vindictive old woman. They made that house beautiful again after you let it become outdated and embarrassing." "With my money," I replied evenly. "Every improvement, every upgrade, every renovation was paid for by me." "We put our hearts and souls into that place," Allison shouted. "We made it a home. A home where I was increasingly unwelcome," I countered. "A home where my possessions disappeared without permission. A home where family photos were removed to erase evidence of my existence." James stood up, looking between his wife and me. Mom, you are overreacting to one social media post. Allison did not mean anything by it. The family that matters most, I quoted quietly. That was deliberate, James. But it was simply the final straw after years of disrespect. This is absurd, Allison spat. You were always included when appropriate. When appropriate? In my own family. In my own home, I walked to the side table and retrieved my folder of evidence. Let me show you what I have documented. One by one, I laid out screenshots, witness statements, and contractor testimonies. Photos of my heirlooms listed on online auction sites. Email exchanges where Allison had represented herself as the homeowner. Contractor quotes addressed to her rather than me. You sold my mother's silver tea service for $8,000, I said, placing the auction listing on the coffee table. The jewelry box my father made by hand went for $1,200. Robert's vintage watch collection over $20,000. Allison's face flushed, then paled. We thought you did not want those old things anymore. You never asked. Just like you never asked before removing family photos. Just like you never asked before claiming my home as your inheritance on social media. James looked stunned, turning to Allison. You sold those things. You told me Mom had given them to you. Allison's facade cracked. What difference does it make? They were just sitting there collecting dust. That house deserved better than being a museum to her past. We are young. We needed to make it ours. But it was never yours, I said quietly. That is the point you have consistently missed. Patricia stepped forward, arms crossed. We will fight this in court. You cannot just evict family without cause. Thomas's voice emerged from the speakerphone I had discreetly redialed. Actually, Miss Turner, as the property owner with clear documentation of ownership maintained throughout the occupancy period, Mrs. Lawrence has every legal right to reclaim her property, with proper notice, which has now been provided. Allison collapsed onto the sofa, tears streaming down her face. This is not fair. We always assumed the house would be ours soon enough. Her words hung in the air, their meaning unmistakable. They had been waiting for me to die or become incapacitated. I stood up straight, finding strength in the painful truth finally exposed. That is the crux of the issue, Allison. You assumed. You assumed my home, my possessions, and my life's work with Robert were already yours to claim. You tolerated my existence as a temporary inconvenience. James stepped toward me, his expression softening into the manipulative concern I had seen increasingly over the past years. Mom, you are upset, and understandably so. But this is an extreme reaction. We can work something out. Maybe a formal agreement about the house eventually transferring to us while you maintain certain rights. No, James. The time for negotiations has passed. You have 30 days to vacate my property. The locks will be changed tomorrow. You will be provided supervised access to collect your personal belongings. You cannot be serious, Allison shrieked. Where are we supposed to go on such short notice? Perhaps Patricia has room, I suggested calmly, since she is the family that matters most. Patricia's face contorted with rage. You will regret this. We know attorneys too. By all means consult them, Thomas interjected through the speaker. They will confirm Mrs. Lawrence's legal standing. Additionally, should you choose litigation, we are prepared to pursue recovery of items wrongfully sold and misrepresented. The three of them exchanged glances, the reality of their situation finally sinking in. I moved toward the door, opening it in clear dismissal. This is my house, my life's work with your father. I deserved respect as your mother, not convenience, until I became inconvenient. You have your answer and your timeline. 30 days. Allison stormed out first, sobbing dramatically. Patricia followed, hissing threats under her breath. James lingered in the doorway, confusion and anger battling across his features. You will destroy our family over a stupid social media post, he muttered. No, James. Your family was destroyed when you allowed your wife to systematically erase me from it. The post simply confirmed what I had denied for too long. As his car pulled away, I closed the door and leaned against it, suddenly exhausted. The confrontation had gone largely as expected, yet the reality of the fracture it represented hit me fully. Minutes later, the security company arrived as scheduled to install temporary monitoring systems. As the technician worked, I sat in Robert's chair, staring at the evidence spread across my coffee table. Documentation of 3 years of escalating disrespect and entitlement. The sun had long set, casting my living room in shadows. Tomorrow would bring lock changes, property assessment, and the beginning of a new chapter. There would be more drama, more accusations, more attempts at manipulation. But for tonight, I had reclaimed something precious that had been slipping away for years: my dignity. The first weeks after the confrontation passed, in tense silence. James made no attempt to contact me, though the security cameras Thomas had insisted upon showed his car driving slowly past my house several times. Allison launched a brief social media campaign portraying herself as a victim of familial betrayal, but wisely removed the posts after Thomas sent a cease and desist letter regarding defamation. Mario's team completed a thorough inspection of my former home, documenting several concerning issues with recent renovations. They removed a load-bearing wall without proper structural support, he reported, showing me photographs. And the electrical work in the kitchen addition was not up to code. You were right to be concerned. I authorized immediate repairs to ensure the property remained safe and valuable. Each time I visited to oversee work, I reclaimed another piece of my history. Family photo albums from the garage, holiday decorations Robert and I had collected over decades, books and mementos that told the story of our lives together. The master bedroom, which had been transformed into an unrecognizable modern space, gradually returned to a warmer, more personal design. Not exactly as it had been when Robert was alive, but reflecting my taste rather than Allison's sterile aesthetic. Dorothy organized weekly dinners with our friend group, filling my evenings with laughter and support. We should have intervened sooner, Barbara admitted during one gathering. We all saw what was happening but did not want to overstep. I needed to recognize it myself, I replied. No one could have convinced me until I was ready to see the truth. At the community center, I joined a watercolor class I had always been interested in but never made time for. The focus required to capture light and shadow on paper provided meditative relief from lingering emotional turmoil. My instructor, a retired art teacher named Elizabeth, became a new friend who knew nothing of my family drama, offering conversations unburdened by history. 3 weeks after the eviction notice, anonymous deliveries began appearing on my porch. A freshly baked apple pie, a potted orchid, a handwritten card simply signed "Neighbors." Word had spread through the community, and quiet support materialized in these small gestures. Though I maintained my resolve about reclaiming my property, the emotional toll was substantial. I mourned the relationship with my son as though experiencing another death. Some nights I woke from dreams where James was a small boy, again reaching for me with complete trust and love. The grief process followed familiar patterns: denial, anger, bargaining depression, and finally a tenuous acceptance. 26 days after the eviction notice, a letter arrived from James. Not an email or text, but a handwritten letter on proper stationery. "Dear Mom," it began. "I am requesting we meet to talk, just the two of us. No lawyers, no Allison. I have arrangements to meet you at Riverside Cafe tomorrow at 10 if you are willing. James." I showed the letter to Dorothy and Thomas, both of whom expressed cautious optimism. It could be manipulation, Dorothy warned, but it could also be the beginning of awareness. "Meet in public, keep it brief, and make no commitments," Thomas advised. "Listen more than you speak." The Riverside Cafe was neutral territory, a place neither of us frequented regularly. I arrived early, selecting a quiet corner table with a view of the door. James entered precisely at 10, looking tired and somewhat diminished in a simple sweater and jeans, rather than his usual business attire. Our greeting was awkward, neither of us quite knowing whether to hug or shake hands. We settled for slight nods before sitting across from each other. "Thank you for coming," he began, hands wrapped around his coffee mug. "I know you have every right to refuse." "I will always listen, James. That has never changed." He nodded, staring into his coffee before meeting my eyes directly. "We found an apartment across town, near Patricia's place. We will be out of the house by the deadline." I appreciate that. Silence stretched between us decades of unspoken feelings, creating an invisible barrier. I did not know about the heirlooms, he finally said. Allison told me you had given them to her to sell since they did not fit the new design aesthetic. I would never have given away your father's watches, or your grandmother's silver. I know that now, he sighed heavily. Looking back, there were so many moments when I should have questioned things, when I should have stood up for you. I just wanted everyone to get along. By everyone, you mean Allison and Patricia. His wince confirmed my assessment. Allison can be difficult when challenged. Patricia even more so. It seemed easier to go along with what they wanted. Even when what they wanted was to erase me from your life. His eyes filled with tears. I did not see it that way at first. It was always presented as modernizing, updating, moving forward. By the time I recognized the pattern, it felt too late to change course. We talked for nearly 2 hours, carefully navigating painful truths. James acknowledged the growing entitlement that had characterized their behavior. I admitted my reluctance to establish clear boundaries had enabled the situation. Allison and I are in counseling. He volunteered near the end of our conversation. Separately and together. This situation has exposed issues we had been ignoring. I nodded, cautiously hopeful, but unwilling to overinvest emotionally too quickly. That sounds like a positive step. I miss you, Mom, he said as we prepared to leave. I know I have no right to ask for forgiveness yet, but I hope someday we can rebuild some kind of relationship. One step at a time, James. Today was a good first step. True to his word, James and Allison vacated the house on day 30. The property management company I hired reported they had left the place reasonably clean, though several fixtures had mysteriously broken during the moving process. Over the following months, I made significant life changes. Working with Thomas, I sold 2 of my rental properties, simplifying my portfolio and reducing management responsibilities. The proceeds were invested in a diversified retirement fund, ensuring financial security without the constant work of property maintenance. Most importantly, I created a transparent estate plan. James would inherit significant assets eventually, but with clear stipulations and professional oversight. No assumptions, no manipulation, just documented intentions with appropriate protections. 3 months after the eviction, James called to ask if he could help with yard work at my current home. The request surprised me, but I cautiously agreed. He arrived alone, spending the afternoon trimming hedges and mulching gardens. We spoke little, but the silent cooperation felt like tentative healing. These occasional visits became more regular. James alone at first, then eventually with Allison, whose attitude had undergone a noticeable adjustment following their relocation to a modest apartment. The humbling experience of losing their presumed inheritance and lifestyle had apparently triggered some genuine reflection. Our new relationship developed with carefully maintained boundaries. We established holiday gatherings at restaurants rather than homes, eliminating territorial tensions. Birthday celebrations became simple, thoughtful affairs, rather than obligatory appearances. Patricia remained coldly distant, which honestly provided relief rather than distress. Her absence allowed interactions with James and Allison to develop without her manipulative influence. My own life expanded in unexpected ways. The watercolor classes led to participation in a local art exhibition. I joined a travel group for seniors visiting national parks I had always wanted to explore. Volunteer work at the community library introduced me to a diverse circle of interesting people who valued my experience and insights. 1 year after the confrontation, James and I sat together on my patio watching cardinals visit the feeder Robert had built decades earlier. I understand now what Dad used to say about earning respect, James reflected. For years, I expected it automatically without recognizing that respect is reciprocal. I nodded, recognizing the wisdom he had finally internalized. Your father would be proud of your growth this year. It takes courage to acknowledge mistakes and change course. I wish I had figured it out without hurting you so deeply. Sometimes the most important lessons come through the most painful experiences. As the sun set on another day, I reflected on the journey of the past year. The humiliation of that social media post had triggered necessary change that might otherwise have never occurred. By standing up for myself, I had ultimately created the possibility for more authentic relationships based on mutual respect rather than exploitation. I learned that giving everything away before I was gone did not make me more loved, it made me less respected. True family values what you give, not what they can take. It is never too late to reclaim your dignity and establish healthy boundaries, even when it means taking everything back and starting over. If you have ever had to make difficult choices to protect yourself from family members who took advantage of your generosity, share your experience in the comments below. Was there a moment when you realized things had to change? How did you find the strength to stand up for yourself? Subscribe if you want more stories about finding courage in challenging family situations, and remember that it is never too late to reclaim your self-respect. Thank you for listening to my story, and may you always find the strength to protect your own worth.